count.
Okay,
Yeah.
gotcha.
Perfect. And then really that's about it. I don't know if how familiar you are with like adjusting how your screen looks so you can see the people. You can do like a gallery view so that you can see everybody.
Right.
in
So
your
can you see my screen right now?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, so right now, the people will be down the right-hand side of the screen,
Okay,
which
perfect.
I don't know, that might affect my, well, depending how I'm going to get here, because I have to be able to use that right-hand side there.
And you should be able to move around like the Zoom window as well. Like if you can minimize it and like, move it around so if it's blocking something. Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah, usually we get about, I don't know, when Ignite first started, there's about like, 15 to 20 people, and then a couple people fell off. I want to say the average now is about like 10.
Still pretty good.
Yeah, which is, yeah, it's good.
Are they mostly all brand new?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's like one or two that are new-ish, but they're like been about maybe like a year or two in the business. I know
Okay.
one guy, this was like his second or third time doing Ignite, but most of them, correct, are brand new.
Okay. I find the funniest thing about doing this online is, I've got my notepad that I made my own notes on, then I've got the screen, then I've got the manual, try and keep all three coordinated as I go through this. That's my biggest challenge.
Yeah, there's a lot of content, but yeah, I think everyone that's the people that are currently participating are really engaged and ask a lot of questions, so it's good.
Okay, good, great.
I know Allison said that when she taught, she ended the class early because it was like your situation where it wasn't 3 hours worth of content, but she still was on for another 30, 45 minutes just answering questions that they had.
Yeah, right, which would be perfectly fine. I can do that all day, but
Yeah.
that's actually more fun to me than trying to go through the stuff and make it sound like you're not reading things too.
Yeah. Yeah. So it seems like it's a good group. They're engaged and like I've been listening in on the trainings too. And everyone has really, really good questions and they're pertinent, and you can tell that they've done their research and their quote unquote homework.
Yeah, right.
See. So I think as co-host too, you'll get I'm sure you've heard that noise, but when someone's waiting, you'll hear like a little noise. So don't worry about that. I'll be the one that like kind of lets them in and stuff. So
I saw it gave me a window to admit them, but you'll take care of that. Okay, good.
yeah, and that way you don't have to get distracted because sometimes people pop in and out, while you're teaching, and it can get a little,
All right. Morning, Jason. Might not be there yet.
I know for me, sometimes it takes a little bit to get connected. So
yeah, that's fine. Morning, Stephen.
Good morning.
How are you doing today?
Fantastic.
All right. Which market center are you with?
I'm out of Rochester, the Brighton office.
Okay. How's Chuck doing?
I don't see him that much, but last time I did see him, he was good.
Yeah. All right. Good. Morning, Jason.
Good morning. How are you, Ken?
I'm doing well. You?
Good.
Where are you out of, Jason?
I'm out of the Brighton office, but I'm actually in Wisconsin at my daughter's
Oh,
visiting.
that's
So it
pretty
took me a
cool.
minute to figure out that I had to be here at 8 instead of 9.
Yeah,
So,
right. You get a little time difference. They should be celebrating some NCAA basketball out there, shouldn't they? Did Wisconsin win again yesterday?
no, they're
Oh, they
out.
didn't. All right.
They're out. They're out. They're very sad.
I had to
But
laugh when I
Syracuse
saw
is
that.
really happy. Can you
after-
believe
after-
it?
What's that?
Syracuse is happy.
Oh yeah, Syracuse, I think is thrilled. I mean, every year they don't look that good during the season. They get to the tournament and then they're a whole new team.
Yeah,
Boeheim's son is spectacular.
yeah, yeah. Quite a game.
And how about Oral Roberts?
Yeah, Roberts is the sweet, sweet baby of the whole thing, huh?
Yeah. They said after just 2 rounds, no one in the country has a correct bracket. So everybody's brackets are blown up.
Probably 1 round, right?
Yeah, a lot of them in 1 round for sure. Hey, Tricia, can you come answer this? This is the guy I put Woodland Way.
Kevin's phone, this is Tricia.
Is that Jaquan?
Yep.
Oh, good morning. How are you today?
Morning. Good, you?
Good, Jaquan. Where are you coming out of this morning?
Keller Williams, Greater Rochester West.
Everybody's Rochester so far there, huh?
Yeah, just
Anthony,
started.
where are you
probably-
out of this morning?
Same thing, Rochester West.
Rochester? Jennifer?
Yep.
Oh, man, that's funny. Hang on 1 second here. Yes.
Woodland, and I got the basement
Yeah.
taken, but he's in the attic, wants to know if there's a switch to turn stuff on.
There's got to be somewhere.
But you don't know of anything.
No, and I know I looked down in the hallway below and didn't find it. So tell him you'll call Sophie and call him back. I've got an electrician in an attic and he's calling, trying to figure out how to turn the lights on. It's always something.
Hello.
Who was that? Is that Omar?
Yes, Omar. Good morning.
How are you today?
Good. How are you?
Good.
Thanks.
Are you out of Rochester also, Omar?
Yes.
I should have just come to Rochester today.
Right.
Just confused. What is he trying to turn on the lights in the attic?
Yes. He's supposed to rewire them.
Oh, you can't figure out.
I have no idea.
Morning.
Good morning, Kristen.
How
Jennifer?
are you?
Morning.
You want me to call Sophie?
Yeah. Well, we're just about at 9 o'clock here. Got 11 people here this morning. Sounds like that's about what the numbers have been running. Well, I think in keeping with Keller Williams traditions here, it's 9 o'clock and we've got an appointment at 9 o'clock, so let's get started. Almost everybody from Rochester, but one from Wisconsin. That might be a new record. I like that. All right. So we're here today for Ignite Spark Session 6, Make and Receive Offers. And the goal today is to talk about how to prepare an offer, how to present an offer. We'll talk a little bit about how to talk to your seller if you're on the list side, how to present an offer to your seller. We're not doing anything about negotiations today. That's the next session. So today we're going to focus just on the preparation and presentation of an offer. My name is Ken Leith. I'm with the Elmira Corning Board. I'm also an investor in our local market center as well as in the Binghamton Market Center. And I've been doing this for 21 years, so I've seen lots of things. And the market that we're in right now is fairly rare in upstate New York, where we just can't keep a listing on the shelf, and we're seeing multiple offers everywhere. I'm assuming, I know Rochester is that way. I'm assuming everybody's probably seeing the same sort of activity. So listings are the name of the game, and presenting a good offer, which is what we're going to talk about, is really important in order to win. I've had some friends up in the Rochester market trying to buy things for their kids, and they've lost out on 7 or 8 negotiations before they finally get one. And they're starting at over asking price. So I know that market's crazy. So let's, I guess let's get started. How's everything been going for everybody through the first 5 sessions of Ignite? Are you getting a lot out of it and feeling like it's worth your time? I'm glad to see after 5 of those, you're still here. So that's good.
Oh, yeah.
All right, good. Well, don't be afraid to talk. I'm fairly informal anywhere along the way. If there's anything you want to ask, any questions, or even anything you might have to interject that you've seen happening that's worked for you or worked for somebody around you, feel free to share, and that'll make the day a little more interesting. We're going to go ahead and get started with this session today here. Let's see. I try and coordinate. I've got my printed pamphlet. I've got what's on the screen, and I've made my own notes on the side in preparation for today. So I try and coordinate. So if you see me looking around, I've got different things going on, but they're all on the same subject here. So here's where we are through the course of Ignite. You guys have shown buyers houses, and your next session is to negotiate contracts. So today is just preparing the offer. But these are things that agents do every day. So we're kind of working our way. We would like to write offers every day. That would be a wonderful, that would be wonderful. So we're going to talk about the offer process. And unfortunately, I don't have the same purchase offer contract that Rochester has. I probably should, if I'd have known everybody was going to be from Rochester, I would have gotten one of those, and we could have put that on the screen today. Is there anyone that's here that's not from Rochester?
I'm from Albany.
Albany?
Yeah.
I'm from
Okay.
Syracuse.
Oh, good. All right, Syracuse. Okay, good. Thank you. All right. Let's move right into the offer process. So you guys have already been out. You've been showing you had your buyer consultation. You've been out showing buyers homes, and even though they probably didn't have a lot of houses to pick from, they found one that they want to make an offer on, right? So this is where we're going to get started. For buyers, it's a little bit of it's an exciting time, obviously, but it's also not without some anxiety, because they know they might be competing to get a house. So you're going to keep them kind of calmed down through the process. And it's also an exciting time for a seller who's seeing more activity on their homes than they normally would see in our markets. Let's see here. I just want to get down to where I know we really begin here. So in your book, my book's not the same pages as yours, but this preparing to write the offer is where things really get started. So you have a checklist for preparing to write the offer in your books, and I have the same one here. Let's go down through this. This is why we're going to get ready. You want to make sure, and you should have already done this when you're starting to show houses to a buyer. You want to make sure they've got their pre-approval, right? Highly competitive market. You're not going to get anywhere with an offer if you don't have a pre-approval. Sometimes the pre-approval will have a number on it higher than what your buyer is willing to do, or specific to the property that they might want to write an offer on. I know we've done some things where we black out the price so that we don't give away too much information. but also you can be prepared to have a conversation with the other agent that, hey, just because they can afford to buy $1 million home doesn't mean they want to buy $1 million home. And on the seller side, they should just be happy as long as they qualify for at least the purchase price that they're making. That's all that matters. Your buyer might say to you, geez, the house price on this seems a little high, $300,000. How do I know it's worth that much? Well, just like when you go and list a house and you prepare a CMA, you can do a quick CMA for your buyer to give them an idea that the value that they're paying is, it's a reasonable value for the market today. And this is interesting. I would hate to be an appraiser in today's market because I swear every time a house sells right now, they're selling for something way higher than they've been selling for in the past. And so they're chasing the market up with their appraised values. And I haven't seen any appraisals fail yet. I just keep waiting for the one appraiser to come in and say, this is ridiculous. I mean, this is 20% over what it was a year ago. How can that possibly be? But so far, they've all been flying. The appraisers are going to be a little panicky when the market starts to turn and become more of a buyer's market than it is today. But a quick CMA, I don't know if your MLSs give you that opportunity. I assume that they do. In ours, we can go bring up comparables, basically hit a button that says compare, and it brings up a short report giving us average sell price, high, low, days on market, all that information fairly quickly, which gives you something objective to show your buyer and say, yes, this is a reasonable price. You really want to do it only on the last 6 months of activity because going further back might not really reflect what's going on in the market. I like to pull a tax record on the place. Generally speaking, I can see what they paid for it last time. I also search in the MLS. If it's sold previously, what did it sell for? Sometimes we get lucky when we pull it up in the MLS, we can actually see interior photographs. So you can get an idea of how many things the current owner has done in terms of improvements. A lot of buyers make the mistake of saying, they'll say to you, well, geez, they paid $200,000 for this 5 years ago. How much have they put in it? They're asking $320 today. How much have they put in it? Well, how much they put in it really is irrelevant, right? Because it's market value. You're selling the house based on market value, not cost plus improvements. But buyers will get hung up on that, especially if the value has gone up significantly, in the amount of time that the current owner has owned the property. So you need to be prepared for that conversation as well. Probably before I would even sit down and write an offer, I would call the other agent up and say, hey, I've got a buyer. We looked at the house. There's strong interest. They may want to write an offer. Is it still available? Seems like a pretty pertinent question today, right? A lot of the properties, they're selling faster than you can get in for a second look. So I like to know the property's available. Are there any other offers on the property? Are you being told that there are any more offers coming? You want to know what kind of a competitive situation you're going to be in when you put this offer together. This checklist talks about building rapport with the other agent and gaining as much information. So are you all relatively new in the business? Who's been in the business more than 2 years? Anybody? No? Okay. So you guys are in a much larger market. We have 350 realtors in our board. You guys all have thousands of realtors in your boards. So it's harder to get to know everybody down here, although it's not the same today. There was a time I felt like I knew virtually every agent, at least the ones that were working full time in our board. And so you develop a relationship with a lot of those people. It's harder with the more agents, but the reason that they talk about building a rapport is if I call you up and I say, hey, Jason, do you have any offers going on that house on Prospect Avenue? And you say, well, there's a lot of interest. People are looking at it, there's a lot of interest. But in conversation with you, I might pull out of you. A lot of people are objecting to the floor plan, or they don't like the color scheme, or, if agents will share more with you than they should, because you all know you're supposed to be representing the best interest of your clients, but people are chatty. And when you start talking to other agents, if you've got a nice conversation going with them, you can learn a lot of things. You might learn that the sellers are going through a divorce and that there's some pressure to get out of there as soon as they can. That leads to motivation to sell, and maybe they would take a little lower offer if there's no other offers coming. You can learn a lot of things about the seller or the seller situation if you have a conversation with that agent. Not every agent is a chatty Cathy, but a lot of them are. You'd be surprised how much you learn. And you'll learn through time which agents are that way. So, you may do a deal with somebody today and they share a lot. Next time it could be 6 to 12 months from now, you've got a buyer that's looking at one of those same agents' listings, and before you write it off, you can call that agent up and you'll learn a lot of things that might help your buyer's cause. So that's what they're talking about when they talk about building rapport and gaining information. This is a people business. You guys are all people because you wouldn't be in this business if you weren't. It's tough enough. So you just use that great conversation skills that you have to try and learn those types of things. You might also find out that, it might be the sellers have already made an offer on a house where they're moving to. So they're motivated, or they don't want to leave until the kids are out of school at the end of June, and your folks have flexibility. Maybe that's a feature you're going to put into your purchase offer that bodes well for you because you can give them the time in their house. They don't have to move twice. All kinds of things you can learn, all different things you can put together. We already talked about inquiring about activity on the property. You love to know if it's got a lot of activity, which they all seem to. I would say the only exception to that is the fixer-uppers. We don't really have much in the way of foreclosures on the market because the banks can't foreclose on anybody. So there's probably going to be a bunch of them coming on the market when those restrictions lift. So if any of you have any interest in listing that type of property, start getting in touch with your banks. You want to see if the seller has prepared a property condition disclosure statement. And you, as the agent, you want to read through that, take a look at that before you sit down to write the offer. Theoretically, your buyers are supposed to see that property condition disclosure statement before writing an offer. If you read the language on that, it says, that if they don't see it prior to writing an offer, they're due a $500 credit at closing off the agreed upon purchase price. I know that in reality, a lot of times they see it right at the same time they're writing the offer, but you should at least have read it ahead of time in case there's anything that's been disclosed that you should know and you should be sharing with your buyers. Like, let's say you went through the house, we're in the middle of a dry summer, there's no indication of any water in the basement, and yet on that property condition disclosure statement, the seller has indicated, in heavy rains in the spring, they do get water in the basement. Well, you should know that. They had no evidence of it. It wasn't obvious to you as you walked through, but they're disclosing it to you, so you need to be aware of that. And you're certainly going to look like you know what you're doing if you're coming to them with that information. You're not just discovering it at the same time you're going through the paperwork with them. So all those disclosures are good to see. And we talked about if there's any other offers. So this is the stuff you're kind of doing ahead of time, right? This is stuff you can look at prior to actually sitting down with your client and doing an offer. Any questions on that? Does that seem to make sense? All right. Have most of you done an offer yet? No? I see
Yeah.
no's.
I've
Yes?
done a listing.
You do a listing. Nicole, you've done an offer?
I've done about 5 or 6 offers for the same client.
Oh,
and
wow.
all of them have been beat. And I just did one yesterday, and I really hope it went through because it wasn't as much competition on this one, and she offered 20,000 more. So I'm like, please.
Oh,
Mhm.
wow. Well, that's great. That was a good client to pick up early in your career, huh?
I got a lot of practice with contracts and purchase offers. Yeah.
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so. That's really good. Anybody else that's written an offer?
I have a few.
Who was that? Mary?
Oh, Pam Smith.
Oh, okay. Good. Well, that's great. How did they go for you?
I've had one accepted.
All right. That's good.
I'm waiting to hear on another one today.
Okay. All right. Well, you got a lot of stuff going on. This is really good. Really good. All right. Well, we'll go through this process and then you'll be able to tell if you got it, if you did everything right, or if there's some things you can improve on, right? All right. So there's a checklist to writing an offer. That's in your manuals. If you printed them off or if you've got them on your desktop. I'm going to See if I can do something different here for a second. I want to try and bring up a purchase offer if I can do it here. I don't know whether this will let me do it or not. Not so worried about the names as I am just the form. Okay, can you see that? Can you see the purchase contract?
No, I think you have to stop sharing and then reshare in order for us to see it.
Well, then let's try that. Can you see it now?
Yes.
Ah, thank you. Always technologically challenged. Checklist to writing an offer. So I'm going to put the offer up here. Now, this is the Elmira Corning Board contract. It's definitely going to be a little bit different than yours, but they all have the same or similar clauses in them. And as we're looking down this checklist, I'll move to that section of a purchase offer just so we can talk about that. Because these are, I mean, obviously these are all the important pieces of a purchase offer. This is what matters. So the checklist to writing an offer says here, price and terms. In our purchase offer, paragraph 2, you're filling in the price and then whether you're doing an all cash offer, mortgage. The other ones I don't think ever come into play. In 20 years, I've never used an assumption of a mortgage. I don't know a bank that allows that anymore. Maybe a VA would. And no mortgage to sell. This would be the seller financing it. That doesn't happen either. If you can't just go to a bank and borrow at 3%, you're probably not credit worthy, and I wouldn't want to lend you the money as the seller myself either. So those things just don't come into play very much. So we'll talk about disclosures as we get a little bit further down the process here. And their checklist is in a different order than our offer is written. It's probably different than yours too. Because on this, it's saying what's included in what's going to convey with the sale of the property. In our purchase offer on number 6 here, basically everything that's attached to the house and the ground stays with it. And then we write in fridge, refrigerator, water softener, water filter, shed. If they're leaving a hot tub, the supplies, or a swimming pool, any pool supplies, that's the stuff that we tend to write into, these lines in here. But you want to be clear because you don't want there to be any gray area when it's time for closing. And then they say, well, you didn't say you want all the pool equipment. Well, what are you going to do with it? You're leaving the pool. We would assume it would stay. So don't assume anything and just write those things in. Do you have a place in the Rochester or Syracuse contract to do that sort of thing? I assume you must, right?
Yes.
Okay. One of the odd things in our market, so right here where it says seller has title to all of the above items, except we have an appliance company around here that rents water heaters, and Culligan rents water softeners and that sort of thing. So you always want to make sure, especially with water softeners, whether they're owned or whether they're rented. If they're rented, I usually put them in here to make sure that my buyers are aware they don't come with the house. If there's a rental fee, I'll usually find out $30, $40, $50 a month and let them know that. But you want to be clear on what you're getting with the purchase of the house. And sometimes buyers will write in things that weren't included, like the washer and the dryer maybe were not included, but you write it in with the hopes of getting. And I always tell buyers the purchase offer is you write in what you want and then they'll tell us what we get. Everything becomes a negotiation later on. But a lot of times if the price is the way we're writing offers anymore at full price or better, on a lot of them, a lot of times you can get the washer and dryer and some other things thrown in. Earnest money. In our market, our contract says that this is on paragraph 4 here, that the buyer either has delivered at the time of the offer or will deliver upon acceptance of the offer. Escrow funds, and they may differ in your market from our market, how much you get in escrow funds. we like to think with these competitive offers, the greater the escrow, the better, because it tells the seller, the buyer's very serious, not going to walk away for no reason. You know, if you have a $500, $1,000 escrow, that's not that much. People walk away from those all the time. If you put 5,000 down, or depending on the price of the house or more, those are numbers that people don't just pick up and walk away from for no good reason. So the escrow is important. It's important that you get it. It's important you give it to your MCA so it gets deposited in a timely manner, because there actually is a state law on that that's supposed to be deposited. Basically, I think the law says as soon as possible. We try and shoot for 2 days. Every offer should have a life of the offer. So on here, they talk about it as, I think, as an expiration date or time for seller acceptance. Find my life of the offer right here on paragraph 20. And again, if you're in a highly competitive situation, you really don't want that life of the offer to be very long. That just allows a bigger opportunity for other buyers to come in with their purchase offer. So generally speaking, we've seen these as short as 24 hours. 48 hours is pretty regular. I don't see any reason to give them any more time than that to negotiate with you. You don't want a big window of opportunity for those other buyers. Financing terms. So this matters depending on the house you're selling. And what do I mean by that? So if you're selling, you know, a nice $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000 house, you're not really worried too much about what kind of financing they get. If you're selling a $100,000 fixer-upper with peeling paint and other repairs necessary, you don't really want a VA or an FHA, because they're not going to get through the appraisal process without a lot of repairs being called out. If that's a conventional property, that's fine. If it's a cash deal, great. But when you're on the listing side and you're getting multiple offers on a property, the type of financing really matters to the likely success of that closing happening, right? So I have one listed right now. It's a $130,000 house. It had all the interior done completely, but the exterior, it's in the middle of the winter time. They didn't do any painting, and there's a lot of peeling paint. And the first offer we got was a VA offer, which we turned down because we said there's just no way you're going to get through the process, which is sad, but it's the reality of it. So the type of financing matters. Conventional is great for virtually every property. And then our purchase offer also says, it kind of tells the seller how much we're borrowing. So we're going to tell them we're borrowing a certain amount of money dollar-wise, or 80%, no more than 80%. So that means we're putting 20% down, trying to avoid PMI. Buyer has cash, so they're a good qualified buyer. You see their pre-qual, and they've got a lot of money to put down. That's the kind of buyer I like to see when I'm listing the house, right? And it
Hey,
also
Ken,
yeah, go ahead.
I have a question going back to the life of the offer.
Okay.
I showed a piece of property on Saturday at noon. And after we did the walkthrough, my clients decided they wanted to put an offer in. I talked to the selling agent, and she said they had 4 offers on the table, and 2 of them expired at 1 o'clock. And here it is, like 12:30, 1:45 at this time. And they accepted one of those offers.
Okay.
But she told me to go ahead and write up my offer, which I did, because it was contingent on attorney's approval this morning. Does that happen often, or?
It does. And I'll usually ask, so if I were in your situation and she told me that, I mean, thank you for letting me know that, right? And I would say, I would actually ask the question, when's your attorney approval? She told you that, because you can get in there. I mean, it's the seller's decision, but you can get in and they can kill that, any other deal, any other contract that they've signed for any reason or no reason at all. So the attorneys have the right to just kill a deal just by saying, I've reviewed it and reject it, and that's it. So if they like your offer better, they have the ability to move on from the one they signed to yours. And that does happen quite often.
Yeah, it just seems a little messy. I don't know. I've dealt with delayed negotiations, which seems great to me because everybody's offer is on the table at the same time. But I know that can't happen all the time.
Yeah, it doesn't happen all the time. And listen, some sellers I just had this recently happen. Somebody came in after the fact, and it was a better offer than the one they had signed. They went back to the first buyer who they agreed to accept and told them, or had me tell them, that we had a better offer, but that we didn't really want to do that. And they came back and increased their offer by $3,000 or $4,000, still less than the new offer, but my sellers agreed to take that because they had already kind of agreed. Like they felt like they kind of gave their word. Once they signed a contract, they feel like they owed that to them. But it was also a significant amount of money that they felt like they had to go back. Like, you know, if you get $8,000 or $10,000 better offer, it's kind of hard to just say no. So they gave the first buyer a chance to improve, which they did, and made up a big piece of the difference, and they stuck with it. I've used that. I feel bad when it happens. I mean, I've had people call me up and say, hey, we want to bring an offer. And I tell them, well, we've already got an accepted deal on it. They ask, are you in the attorney review period? Yes, we are. It comes in by law. We as the realtors have an obligation to present any and all offers, regardless of how good, how bad, how early or late. So I presented it, and it was $10,000 more. And the seller was like, boy, I feel like I owe the first person, but $10,000 is a lot of money. And he ended up taking the new one, had his attorney kill the deal. And there's nothing you can do. There's nothing anyone can do if an attorney kills a deal during the attorney review period. Perfectly legal. So it does happen. That's why you try and keep your life of offers as short as possible. And we haven't talked about attorney review yet, but I do the same thing with that. I mean, the attorney review period, we've been keeping those to 2 days, 3 days max, because we want to shorten that window as well. I think there's a lot of agents that use that knowing that they've got that in their back pocket. So any other questions on that stuff?
I didn't realize that you could ask the attorney to kill the deal.
You can, sure.
Okay.
I mean, really, your seller is asking them to kill the deal, right? He's representing the seller, not
Yeah,
you.
I mean, that's what I mean. The seller asks the attorney.
Yep.
The attorney doesn't have to have a reason
Does
other
not.
than seller asked me.
That's it.
Okay. Good to
The
know.
way that's written, and Anthony Gatto, the NYSAR attorney, has done presentations on this repeatedly. If the attorney rejects it, he can do it for any or no reason.
Okay. Good
So,
to know.
yep. I mean, obviously that's a key strategy to use occasionally. You just don't want to do it all the time.
Right.
Talked about financing terms, a buyer pre-approval letter. So obviously you need to have a pre-approval letter. I wouldn't take an offer if somebody didn't have a pre-approval with it. But do you ever stop and think that who it's from makes a difference? Like in Rochester, I don't know if you guys are dealing with Movement Mortgage. I think you guys have Premium up there as one of the big players in the mortgage market, which is good. And I'm sure there's probably a dozen others. But I got one last year. These people came in with a pre-approval from Loan Depot. And I'd never done a deal with them. It's an online lender. I'm always leery of online lenders. I've done numerous Rocket mortgages and they've gone fine. But there always seems to be a lot of paperwork needed at the end of a deal with these online lenders. Like it just seems like it never ends. You're just constantly coming back with more and more paperwork. Some of it seems like you've already provided it numerous times and they just keep asking for the same thing. So if I have two buyers, they're both basically the same offer, but one of them's pre-approved with a lender I know and like, maybe have influence over, can call and say, hey, I need something in a hurry, or some online lender that I've never heard of. I'll tell you what, who that pre-approval is from really matters. And it matters, when I'm presenting my offers to my seller and saying, look, this guy's pre-approved with around here, like the Corning Credit Union would be a big one. That's a good one. And this one's pre-approved with somebody, a lender out of California that I don't know. I'd prefer to deal with the guy that's local. So that's another thing. It's not just the terms of the loan pre-approval, but also who it's from. Closing date. Obviously, the closing date has to work for both parties, right? So the buyer comes in with a closing date that works for them. If their agent's done a good job in talking to you as the listing agent, you may have already told them, look, they don't want to close till the end of June. Hopefully it comes in with an offer with a closing at the end of June. But virtually every term of an offer is negotiable, right? We always think about price when we talk about negotiating an offer, but there's a lot of things that are not priced. Terms of the home inspection, the type of the financing, when they're going to close. I mean, there's all kinds of things that are negotiable, and the closing date is just one of those. So you need a closing date that works for both parties. In our market lately, it's 60 days is the typical closing. Even cash deals, I don't know why they can't close a cash deal quicker, but they seem to push out to that 45, 60-day window as well. So give yourself a reasonable time. Like some people think, well, we're going to close in 30 days. Well, that's great, except nobody can make it happen. The banks might be able to hit that time frame, but the attorneys will never be ready. And if a survey is required, that slows it down. So do you do surveys as an automatic requirement in Rochester?
Not automatic.
Does anybody know that one? Like here, we have a survey that's been done within the last 10 years on virtually every deal. Not so there. How about Albany or Syracuse?
I'm not sure. I'm so new. I'm not sure. I haven't
Okay, that's
gotten through
all right.
that process yet.
That's okay.
Same here.
Yeah, so the surveys are what slow things down a lot here in terms of getting to closing on time. And if you're on the seller side and you know your seller is definitely going to sell, like they're leaving the area, they've been relocated for a job, retiring to Florida, whatever it is, we ask the attorneys to order the survey as soon as we list it. They don't always listen, but it's very helpful if they do, because then you're not waiting for a survey at the end.
So the survey is the responsibility of the seller.
It is in our market. Should be, I would think that would be everywhere, but there's a lot of differences. Like in Rochester, you guys have the buyers pay for well and septic testing. I think here with the sellers pay for it. So there are subtle differences between the different regions.
Yeah, I got a quick question.
Go ahead.
So a seller can rescind their offer, or an offer coming in, can the buyer also rescind their offer if they say they found a better house next day and they decide, I don't want.
They can during the attorney review period, if that's what you're asking.
So their attorney can also
Absolutely.
rescind the offer. Okay.
Yep. They have that same right to an attorney review. Home warranties. I don't know how many home warranties are sold in each of your markets. I don't personally sell a lot of them. It's funny. This is another thing. California, it's like virtually every house comes with a home warranty. Around here, there's some we sell. It just depends on the house sometimes. If I know there's a lot of things that are aging, I might say to a buyer, it might be worth the $500 for you to get a warranty. Or if we're paying a lot for the house, we might ask the seller to provide one because it's about $500.
I have a question about that.
Yeah, go ahead.
So if my buyer put an offer on a house where the water heater's over 15 years old,
Okay.
should they get a home warranty, or should I suggest it?
So the home warranty generally has a $100 deductible. So if they buy the house and the water heater fails, they're going to call an 800 number. They pay the first $100 when the service person walks in the door, and then the warranty would cover the repair replacement of the water heater, probably a replacement.
But only if it breaks down, right?
Only if it breaks down.
In that first year.
Yeah, they can't just call and say, hey, it's 15 years old, I need a new one.
Okay.
Right, so it has to fail. It can't be water heater, that's fine. I'm thinking on some things, like some people buy a house, they know the furnace is bad, they call the warranty company as soon as they move in. Then the warranty company, if it's a pre-existing condition, if they can determine it's a pre-existing condition, they won't fix it. But if it was working fine the day they moved in, it could be next week. I had a water heater fail in the first week somebody bought the house once, and the warranty company put a new one in. They read through them. If you're going to start talking about selling those, read through them. They have a deductible, and they have a certain amount maximum that they'll pay for different things. So regarding appliances, they may max out at $2,500. On a furnace, they max out at a number that you think is low, but keep in mind that they're buying everything at wholesale and with contractors working at reduced labor fees. So they might still be able to replace the furnace for what they've got in there, but it's not, they're not going to put a $10,000 furnace in under the warranty. they're going to repair or they're going to pay for so much towards a $10,000 furnace. But a normal, less than 3,000 square foot house, whatever, whether it's a boiler, furnace, forced air, they can generally replace those kinds of things if they need to within the guidelines, subject to the $100 deductible.
The big part of the Rochester strategy, found a warranty company that is very good and as a service to the buyers who are walking,
Mhm.
waiving inspections. So.
Oh,
it can
we're
be
waiving
very
an
good.
inspection. Well, that's an interesting way to approach that. I mean, if you're going to waive the inspection to improve your offer, putting a warranty on the house is not a bad idea. At least it covers all the systems and mechanicals. A home warranty does not cover a roof. Sometimes they'll cover just like a couple shingles that come off or something, but it doesn't cover anything structural, and no roof, no leaky basements, that type of stuff. It covers furnace, electrical, plumbing, heating, air conditioning, that sort of thing. It doesn't cover window units of air conditioners. So it's limited. And when you read through your warranty program, you get a better idea of exactly what it covers. But that's actually a smart way to approach that, Jason, if you're going to waive the warranty or waive the inspection. That's a good idea.
I wanted to ask about the inspection thing too. Sorry, real quick.
Yeah, go ahead.
Because a couple of the offers I put in, and just, my client definitely wants a home inspection. She's not budging on that, which I don't blame her. And then like the listing agent will be like, well, we don't like that, because you might walk out after the inspection. Like, but that's not normal now to not have an inspection. It's,
The majority of people are still doing an inspection. Where I will play games with my inspection clause. So this paragraph C here is in our contract. I don't know whether you have, like Ithaca, I think has a certain dollar amount, or it's anything they can ask for. In ours, we say the inspector is going to go in and look for major defects, and a major defect is anything that will reasonably cost over you put in the dollar amount to correct. So rather than waiving an inspection, I may say $2,000 or $2,500, where I'm only worried about something really big. The attic is filled with mold, the roof needs to be replaced, the furnace is shot. But beyond that, all the little things, what we're saying, we're okay with taking care of those. So this is how we protect ourselves or improve our offer most of the time, not waive it, but make it so that number is big enough that they know it can only be if there's something major. And if they're fairly confident in their house, then they're going to feel pretty good about that. Like there's not going to be any $2,500 issues. The big one there that catches people is most people never get in their attic. And the reality is if the bathroom fans are venting up into there, or if they've covered over the soffit venting with insulation and they're not getting any airflow, then they can definitely get some moisture buildup in there and get some mold buildup. And those are expensive problems to fix. If you have to bring in a Service Master or Serv Pro or somebody like that to come in there and do things, I mean, they rip out all the insulation. They have to seal up the house, and they come back in, they spray everything down, they re-insulate. By the time you're done, we had maybe a 1,500 square foot ranch home last year that had the quote came in at $11,000. I think we found somebody that did it for $8,000. So mold in the attic's a big deal. When you're going listing a property, if they have pull down attic steps, take advantage of that and go up there. I don't want anybody crawling through hatches and trying to get up in the attic. But if they have pull down steps or permanent steps, go up there and look around, because that's a problem you could head off. If you see mold, you could have them have somebody check that out as part of your listing and deal with that up front. But so this is, Nicole, going back to your question, this is how I'd rather do it rather than waive the inspection. But I do like Jason's idea that if you waive the inspection, then you ask for a warranty, or at least buy a warranty to cover some of the systems of the house. But that would not address some of these other things that we're talking about now. Does that make sense?
yes, thank you.
Okay. So that's on this checklist where they talk about repair limits. That's what we're talking about there. So again, so I don't know how the Rochester contract is written on that. Does anybody want to shed some light on that? Do you put in a major defect amount?
No, we don't have that.
No.
I don't think Syracuse has that either.
Okay, and I know Ithaca does not.
Only for like the appraiser's thing, the appraiser's inspection or something.
Okay, right. Yeah, we can't control what the appraiser puts down, unfortunately. special clauses or contingencies. So the first thing I think of there is the well and septic. So we have a paragraph on our contract that addresses well and septic. And here it does say that the seller will pay for, and we check the boxes. So those are some other extra contingencies. Other things you could put in might be that you're asking for the swimming pool equipment, or, you know, we had that in the other place, or ask for a hot tub to stay, or, I mean, anything. It depends on the type of property. If you sell a property with 3 or 4 acres, you might ask for them to leave the mower and attachments, or, you know, things like that. You try to negotiate anything and you can, if it's reasonable. Again, you're offering pretty close to full price these days on everything. So you might be able to get some of those extras thrown in. So one thing that this chapter spends a lot of time on, I want to talk about, they talk about doing a cover letter with your offer. You're representing a buyer. And so you're going to write this nice letter that, you know, my family is moving here from out of state, and they're coming to take a job with such and such a business. And, you know, they have 3 children and 2 dogs, and they love your house. And, you know, that all sounds nice. And I've had people do that. But we've been coached for the last few years. I'll go back to Anthony Gatto again, the attorney for NYSAR. He warns that a cover letter like that, you really are treading closely to violating fair housing laws. So the problem is, you know, if I go and talk about my nice family with 4 kids, and then somebody else brings in an offer, and either they didn't write the letter, or they're just a couple, let's say they're an international couple, and then you take the buyer or the seller takes the offer from the family, the other people could feel like they were not treated equally because they weren't the family. Like, you know, this buyer's appealing to, you raised all your children here, now you're getting ready to move away, and you'd love to see another family come in and do the same thing. And so you really have to worry about kind of crossing lines there, with, especially in this day and age. So I personally would never write a letter. If you want to share with the other agent that, you know, I've got this family moving here, they're being relocated to the area, or just these people, this buyer being relocated to the area. They've seen a lot of houses. They like yours the most. They really feel like it fits what they're looking for. You can be very non-specific in terms of the makeup of the family, where they're from. I think the more you avoid those types of things in conversation, and certainly in writing, the safer you are. So while this chapter does talk a lot about writing a cover letter to try and put a nice spin on your folks, I'd warn you to be careful about that. That makes sense to people?
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So now let me see if I can go back to where I was. God, I love it when it works like that. Easily pleased. All right, let's see here. Have you all been working in command? Since you're new, you guys should all be working in command, I think, right? So this wants us to create an offer in command. Hang on a second here. All right, so let me see if I can take you here and make this work. Oh, wait a second. Oh, wait a minute here. Let's see what I've got up under there. What is under there? Oh, okay, here we go. So in command, if you've entered your contact person's name and you created an opportunity, so you've gone ahead and created a buyer opportunity. Can you see this or not yet?
Yes.
You can, okay. So once you go in and you've got your contact, you create an opportunity, then you have to come in here and add this information about the property that you're going to make your offer on. And then we're going to do an offer. And stop me if I'm going faster than I should be. All right, so this is, I use this a lot. Well, every offer I get together, I go in here and I create one in here because it ends up leading you to put your commission request in. But when you represent the seller and you have multiple offers, this is actually really cool because you can do a comparison and email it to your seller. So here you'd come in, you just say, you can call it whatever you want. Say offer 1, 2, 3, 4, or it automatically puts in initial offer. And then once you've got that information and you click on the parties and then you say who's the buyer and who's the seller. I'll just make something up here. You're putting in which agent's on which side, put in all that contact information, it helps later. And then you get to come in here and give the details of the offer. So let's say they're putting 20% down. So then hopefully your sales price, as it shows here, matches your contract price. You can put that they're putting down 1, 2, 3% of the purchase price as an escrow, or you can come over here and just put a dollar amount and it'll calculate the percentage for you. I don't know what option fee is for. We've not used option fees here, so I don't do anything with that. If you had seller concessions, they would go in down here. And then when you're done with all that information, you hit the agent analysis. This is where if you have multiple offers, you would go in to each one and say, you know, this is a conventional, but maybe you would say a con is that they're only putting 5% down. And another a pro might be no inspection. Anyway, you make all your notes and everything here and you save this. And it brings up this nice little summary. If you had multiple offers, these would all be right here on top of each other. And you could do a quick little comparison looking at that. You'd make it so you could send that to your seller so they could see what are the good things, what are the bad things, how do they compare with one another. You know, you could have closing dates, you could have the inspection, just anything pertinent to their decision making. And then once you've accepted one of those, you just go over here and click the, not there, click right here, accept the offer. And it will end up showing up in your reports and everything as an accepted offer with a projected date and projected commission and all that kind of good stuff for you. So you can kind of calculate what you've got coming in terms of your own cash flow.
Ken,
Yep.
this is not something you would do to send to another agent for a purchase offer. Is this
Nope.
just
This
for
is just for
your,
you.
okay.
It's for you and your seller, if you were representing the seller. You're not even using this with the buyer, to be honest with you, other than tracking your own successes. So as you put deals together, you would come in here and put that offer in. When you write the offer, let me come back to where I'm not on here anymore. I don't use that except for after I've got an accepted contract. And then, or if I have multiple offers, I'll do it for my seller. If I'm representing the buyer, that won't really come into play until later for me. But it can help the seller trying to decide between different offers because there's so many pieces that if you want to be able to show them, here's the closing date, Here's how many days they have for an inspection, what's their dollar threshold, the inspection. You can write all of that stuff out. So they've got a comparison to kind of look at them all one next to the other. Because it can be overwhelming for a seller. Number one, they're not familiar with your contracts at all. So it's all Greek to them. They're looking at all that like, wow, that's a lot of verbiage. And you know that there's only about 8 or 10 points on there that really matter significantly between different offers. So you have to make them comfortable that you're showing them what's important, but it is a way for them to do an analysis of one versus the other.
I have a question.
Yep,
Can you talk a little bit about seller concessions?
sure. Well, what do you want to know about them? I mean, like how they work or?
Anything. I really don't have a handle on it. Yeah.
Okay, all right. So with a VA, FHA, or Sunny Mae, you can ask a seller to contribute as much as 6% back towards the buyer's closing costs and prepaid expenses. You write that right into the contract. So how does that work? So if you were looking at a closing sheet, like at the attorney's office, if you looked at the seller side, let's just say that you had a $100,000 purchase price and they're giving 6% back to the buyer. So on the seller side, it's going to show selling price $100,000, minus they got to pay their attorney and pay off any taxes that they still owe. And there's going to be a subtraction of $6,000 right off the proceeds to the seller, minus $6,000 to help buyers' closing costs. So that ends up netting them down to, some number closer to 90,000 by the time they pay commissions and everything else. On the buyer side, it shows that they're buying a house for $100,000, that they have all these closing costs of their own. So, you might work your way up to $105,000 or $107,000 between taxes, closing costs and all that. And then you're going to see a deduction minus $6,000 proceeds from seller that reduces the amount of cash that they need to bring to the closing. So it's almost like they're financing that $6,000. They just didn't have to come with cash. So where it benefits the buyer, it reduces the buyer's cash needed to close by that 6%. When you go to the closing, you've got to bring if it's FHA, let's say they're putting 3.5% down. So they need $3,500 for their down payment. They need a year's worth of taxes, perhaps, maybe another $4,000. So now they have $7,500. They have to pay an attorney, appraisal, and all that stuff. So they may have like $9,000 of cash they need. Right off the top, you're going to subtract $6,000 that came from the seller. Now they only need to come to the closing with that difference. They're still going to have to come up with $3,500, but that's how it works. So they add all the things they need. Go ahead.
It does get financed, that 6%. It's
It really
folded
does.
into the mortgage.
It really does. Yeah.
Okay.
So when it comes to these concessions, when you send your buyer to a lender to get pre-qualified, the lender should be coaching them as to what type of financing is best for them, right? So a lot of times if it's a first-time home buyer, they don't have a lot of money, but they have a job, they have good credit, so they're going to qualify. The lender should be telling them, you should get an FHA, you're going to get an FHA loan, I'm going to pre-qualify you for FHA. You need 3% back from a seller, or you need 6% back. They should be telling the buyer that and telling you that. So when you go to write an offer that you structure it that way. But the lender should do a good job of explaining how that works to your buyer. And hopefully, if you get those relationships with 2 or 3 or 4 lenders that you like working with a lot, if you can use them to coach your people, it's a really good way to do that. But that's the reality of how it works. Now, did that make it clear as mud or?
No, that helped. That helped. Thank you.
Okay. Yeah, the ability for a seller to give money back to the buyer is what helps a lot of people buy their first home. Because a lot of people, they are in that situation where they have a good, dependable job, credit score is good, and they have no money in the bank or very little money in the bank. And then the other thing is if they don't have any money and you're having trouble getting them into something, talk to the lender about whether they can get a gift from a family member, because that also can come into play where mom and dad are allowed to give them $3,000 or $4,000 or $5,000. They have to write a gift letter, and that has to be something that complies with the bank's requirements. So sometimes they don't even need to have their own 3.5% down if their folks will give it to them and it's truly a gift. It's another way to kind of make it work.
Actually, we just did that for our son. I think it was up to somewhere is like 11 to 13,000 per gift.
Yeah, well, that's a lot of money. I mean, that's great.
Yeah.
And it gets your kids into a house that they wouldn't be able to afford for years from now, especially the way so many young people have student debt. And that counts against them when they go to apply for a mortgage. It's tough.
Kristen, the 11 to 13,000 limit is the lender's limit?
I think it was, I don't think it was the lender's limit. I think it was like tax laws.
Okay.
So my husband.
Yeah, that's true, Kristen. There's a limit to how much you can gift without there being any tax consequence to your kids.
Right, because
I
that's
thought
what
that
our.
was $10,000 a year, but
Yeah, because that's what our CPA said. You can only do, and I can't remember the exact amount, but it was somewhere around between 11 to 13,000. So
yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, myself, my husband, and my other son gifted that amount that he needed just for the deposit.
right, nice. That was nice of you.
Yeah, he's paying it back.
That's good. Yeah, and a bank may have their own limits too. I mean, they may only allow you to give them 5% or something. I don't know. Just talk to the lenders about that when you get to that situation.
Great, thank you.
All right. So where was I again? Here we go. All right. Okay, offer writing guidelines. It says turn to page 6 of the participant guide for offer writing guidelines. So make sure your buyers understand how the earnest money works. A lot of buyers don't really know what that's all about. Do they get that back? How can they lose that? So be prepared to have a conversation with them about that. They pretty much can't lose it unless they breach the contract. And it will get applied on that same closing statement that we were talking about. They'll see, their $1,000 deposit come off of the money they need to bring to closing because they've already paid that. All right, let's see here. Number 3. Made all these little notes to myself. I have to make sure I follow them. All right, so keep these guidelines in mind and use the checklist in your toolkit called Checklist to Write an Offer as you write the offer. Make sure they know they got to bring an escrow check. Again, in our board, it says you can bring it once it's an accepted offer, but frankly, it's easier if we collect it right up front so we have it. We don't deposit it until we have an accepted offer. But once it's an accepted offer, we want to turn that in as soon as possible. Have you all gone through and set up templates? Let me just bring you guys back here so I can see you again. Where did you go? Like I still use dotloop within Command, but you can use DocuSign. I don't know which way you guys go, but you can set up templates and set them up for yourself. So like in our office, we have standard templates that don't have everybody's name in them. And then we created templates that are for me in particular, so that we went ahead and put a lot of the things we already filled in the blanks everywhere that it asks for the listing agent or the buyer's agent, depending which side of the deal I'm on. All that stuff's already duped in. So we just created the templates specific to me, which saves a lot of time when it comes to doing your paperwork. So if you haven't done that, find out from your tech person how to go about and do that, because it's a whole lot easier not to have to retype everything again. If you're going to be writing the offer and meeting with people in person, that seems to be happening very seldom these days. You obviously can bring your laptop with you and do everything right there with them. Are most of you using the electronic signature to do everything with people that way?
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, it's obviously quick and easy. It's one of these things that I think I'll never go back the other way. You know, we've done the Zoom now for a year. We've done electronic signatures for more than that, but really focused on them this year. We took the month of February, went to Florida and worked remotely from there for the whole month, and our clients didn't even know we were gone. We listed property, we sold property, we wrote offers, wrote listings. I just had somebody else put signs and lock boxes in, and they didn't know the difference. It was kind of amazing. I don't think you could do it for month on month, but for 3 or 4 weeks in the middle of the winter, it wasn't a problem. So, so just looking down through this, what we haven't talked about here yet. So when your buyer makes an offer, they're essentially selling themselves to the homeowner. This is where they bring in the cover letter again. If you decide to write a cover letter, I would make it very, very generic, not very specific to who or what they are, and be focused on what the benefits of dealing with your buyer are. You know, their financial qualifications. They love the house. You can go ahead and do that kind of stuff. But again, I would shy away from these. Buying, offer, and command. Yeah, so pretty much everything that's on this offer writing guideline sheet, I think we've really touched on all of it. Oh, that's not supposed to be there. Okay. All right.
And do you, oops,
Go ahead.
do you only use dot loop? I've only been shown like transaction desk and Authentisign. I have not been shown dot loop. Is that something that people either like one or the other and are comfortable using, or do they go back and forth?
So if you've been with Keller Williams for a while, we've been using dot loop for, I don't know, 5 years anyway. So it's just what you're used to. And when they created command, when you go to start a transaction, it gives you 2 choices in there, either dot loop or DocuSign.
DocuSign, okay.
So I use dot loop because that's what I know. It's what I'm familiar with. I'm not sure. I don't know what the future of dot loop is with Keller Williams because they're owned by Zillow, and no one's in love with Zillow these days. So they've started they're basically a competing brokerage with us now. They've become a real estate brokerage. They're not a third party independent real estate site. They are truly a real estate brokerage now across the country. So I don't know that we trust them to keep our information proprietary that's what we contracted them to do. So at a much higher level than me, they're dealing with that, and we'll see where that takes us. But worst case scenario, we'd end up with something like DocuSign, or there may be a different product that comes down the road. All this stuff changes constantly. But Command is a Keller Williams proprietary software. And so they like to have everything within it developed in-house. So the dot loop may end up going away if they create their own similar program. I think dot loop's really easy to work with, so that's what I'm used to. I like it. All right. Any other questions there? All right, so let's talk about objection handling a little bit. So in every situation in real estate, people can pipe up with objections. In your other classes, you may have dealt with, when you're doing lead generating, people having objections of one sort or another. Well, the same thing can happen when a buyer is being coached. You're trying to tell the buyer how the best way is that they might get the house. I always like to find out when somebody decides, okay, this is the house we want. My wife says to people all the time, she's in the business with me, and she says, let me ask you this. If you lose this house, how will you feel? Some people buying a house is it's a business transaction. They're not emotional. Some people are extremely emotional, right? And you come across both kinds. And so when you ask the question, well, if you don't get this house, we lose it to another buyer, how will you feel? If the answer is, I'll be devastated, well, then I know I'm going to write an offer up that's going to be really strong. If they're like, well, if I don't get this one, another one will come along. Okay, that's fine. Then we'll approach it differently. It's kind of learning what's on the mind of your buyer before you sit down and write the offer, right? So in here, they're talking about buyers that when they go to write an offer, maybe they're asking the seller to do things like, I don't know. Let's say the floors need to be sanded and repaired. If you're going to ask the seller to do that, or you want the seller to paint rooms, they've got that bright orange bedroom, the kid picked their own color, and you hate that color. Your buyers hate that color, so you'd like them to ask to paint. You can ask for buyer or sellers to do anything, but again, you have to always be conscious of the market. The market today is you're lucky if you can get the house, right? So asking for a lot of extras from a seller in this market is probably not the best way to get the house. I mean, if they get the same offer from two different people, right, and one wants some extra things done prior to closing, yeah, I'm not going to do that, right? I'd rather take buyer number two, and who wants nothing, right? They just want to pay me and get my house. So I don't think you're dealing with a lot of objection handlings from buyers right now. The biggest things are how to maximize or where to maximize their offer. Let's talk about something that's not anywhere in here, and that's escalation clauses. Are you guys using escalation clauses when you're writing offer? Do you know what they are? Anybody not know what they are? Okay. Well, let's talk about them, because to me, these have become a critical piece in winning houses in the market we're facing today. An escalation clause, actually, I can bring one up, I think. Hang on a second here.
It's like an auction.
Well, yeah, a little bit, right?
If you write on escalation clause, can you start at asking?
You can start anywhere you want to.
Because like, would that look bad that you're starting at asking, but your like escalation clause is like 20,000 more?
No. In fact, we wrote an escalation clause last week for 9,000 less than asking price, because we knew there was an offer on the table. The fact that they hadn't just accepted that offer told me it wasn't a full price offer. So we went in and I'll give you the exact number. So it was on the market for 329. We wrote an offer of 320, and with an escalation clause. Why can't I get this to, oh, here we go. Hang on a second. I can't think and talk at the same time, apparently. Is this what I wanted? That did not work, right? All right, hang on a second here. Try this again. Nope. Share screen. Okay. I don't know how to get that bar on the top to go away. How do I get the bar to disappear on the top of the screen there? Do you know where it's giving me the pause? Oh boy. All right, let's just see here. No, it's not working. Well, if that disappears for me here in a second, I'll try that again. So the escalation clause basically says we're offering, you've made your offer and it's the 320,000. The escalation clause says that buyer is willing to exceed any competing offer by X amount of money. We put $2,000 in this one. So we're willing to beat any competing offer by $2,000, not to exceed a maximum price of, and we went to 335, which was $6,000 over asking price. So why would you do that? So, well, there's a couple reasons, right? When we heard there was another offer, we didn't just want to go in and offer 335. We don't know how much money we're leaving on the table. We may be way overspending. So why would we do that, right? So the escalation clause allows you to beat a competing offer. And by saying $2,000, that's a fairly significant amount over any other offer. It's not like we said by $500 and they might say, well, we already accepted it. We're not going to leave them for $500, but by $2,000, and then you have to set a limit because you don't want to say forever we'll beat them by $2,000. What if they did something similar I mean, you're not just going to keep going up and up and up forever. So basically that's what an escalation clause says. They have been very successful for us over the last 5 years or so, and especially in the market today, because people are offering full price on their first shot. So Nicole, like you said, is it okay to start at asking price? Well, sure it is. But I mean, unless I know there's a bunch of offers on the table, I'd probably start just a little bit lower, but I would always want to go above asking price if I really want the house. So that buyer that I said, you know, she would be devastated if she didn't get the house, her ceiling might be 340 or 345. I mean, I've seen people offering $20,000 and $30,000 over asking price. The guy who doesn't care, he might max out at $1,000 over asking. If he doesn't get it, he doesn't get it. I don't think I've ever had a buyer who isn't willing to do an escalation clause. Some of them are just a little more aggressive than others when it comes to their ceiling on what they'll go to. I was going to show you our escalation clause, but I can't seem to.
I guess prior to being a real estate agent, I only just learned about escalation clauses this year,
Mhm.
and we lost a lot of houses, and I'm surprised at how many times we put in offers and the agent never said anything to us about, you know, putting in escalation clauses. So now that I'm an agent, I just listed a house and had offers coming in.
Mhm.
And I said to my mentor, I'm like, how do you quantify the escalation clause with all the other contingencies in the offers? And I guess what I didn't realize as a buyer previously is that none of that other stuff matters. It's just the dollar amount, right?
Well, I mean, that's the big thing you're negotiating on there. I mean, at the same time that we did that, we raised our escrow, we raised the major defect to 2,500 on the inspection. So all those other pieces, we still looked at each of those individually and tried to improve them where we could. But when it comes to comparing the escalation clause, so if you've got 3 offers and one of them has an escalation clause, you're certainly going to look and see what's their max. How does that compare with the other 2 offers, with the other 2? Or if they all have escalation clauses, who's going the highest? You know, you find out who's second highest, and you're going to go your escalation clause, your $1,000 or $2,000 bump over that number. The
And
other thing to be, oh, go ahead.
I was just amazed at how many offers came in with escalation clauses that everybody escalates usually at like 1,000, some were 2,000, but the smarter real estate agents that are helping to educate their buyers would, in my opinion, would tell them, you know, do net over the highest price and maybe do 1,100, you know, because we lost a deal personally because we escalated at 1,000 and the other people escalated at 1,000 over the highest.
But yeah, so you have to learn to play with this a little bit. So you might say that your maximum is 345, 123, you know, let's make some goofy number up. You want to be over the even $1,000 number because sometimes that extra couple $100 might be what wins you the deal.
Right, exactly.
So you were saying basically as a buyer, you never heard of an escalation clause. Your buyer's agent didn't tell you about that.
No.
And how long ago did you buy a house?
Well, I'm an investor, so previously to this year, I've lost lots of deals because I didn't know about escalations.
But we've only been using them for the last 10 years or less. So that's why I was asking. You bought something recently and you weren't told about that. That's too bad.
Yeah. So I'm like, geez, I could have been doing escalation clauses and maybe winning some of these bids.
Right. Well, I can tell you, we've won a lot, and we won the one last week on this, and we got it for 327, which was $2,000 less than asking price, which goes back to why you might not want to start at full asking price and go up from there. We started at 320 and got it at 327, so my folks never had to kick in the escalation clause, and they saved $2,000 off of asking price. So they were happy. They were protected up to that higher number, but they didn't have to pay it, so they were pretty happy about that. So it's a great tool.
kind of along with that though, I mean, irregardless if it's got an escalation clause or not, what about somebody, no matter what they're willing to pay, the seller still ultimately can decide, say it was more money, but because it was more money, they wanted a full-blown home inspection. They wanted certain tests done, where another one comes in, they don't want any of that. They don't want any of that, but it was a lower price. So the seller ultimately has the decision to say, yeah, even though they're 5,000 over what this person wants, but because they don't want a home inspection and they don't want this, majority of the time they would end up going with that because it's a lot less hassle, even though it's less money.
Yeah, and it is 100% the seller's decision, no doubt about that. Yeah, a lot of times it depends on the house. Like if I have a 1800s farmhouse and a buyer waives a home inspection, like to me, that's worth $5,000 or more. Like you don't know what you find in an 1800s, 1880s, whatever it is. There's something wrong in that house, right? I mean, you can't get a home inspector to walk into a brand new construction and not find something wrong, let alone when they go in something that's over 100 years old. So a waived home inspection on that is worth a lot.
Right.
You know, if somebody waives a home inspection on brand new construction, that's not really worth that much.
Right.
So a lot depends on what property you're dealing with, but you're right. And it always comes down to seller's decision. If they want to take less money because they like the other terms, I get it. Absolutely. So keep that escalation clause in your back pocket, because when you know you're competing, and we all are these days, and you're going to find that a lot of experienced agents are using them on everything. So you want to be prepared. And you almost always have to have a ceiling that's higher than asking price, or you're not going to get it. I actually had somebody, this is funny, I've never had this happen before. We had somebody, we listed a house, this was about a month ago, $235,000 house. First 2 days, we got 3 offers in, and one agent brought me an escalation clause that had no limit. And I was like, yeah, no limit. I mean, I literally had to call her and be like, you know, you didn't put a limit on here, right? She goes, yep, they've already lost three houses in bidding wars. They want to make sure they get this one. And I was like, and they didn't get it because they like the terms of another one better. So they lost again. But I felt bad for them that way because they were willing to pay anything. But I don't even know how a house would appraise. I mean, if people went without limits, you know, what are they going to end up paying, $280 or $290 for a house that's listed for $230? That'll never appraise. But that's the crazy stuff that's happening in the market today. So
yeah, I listed a house for $279, ended up selling for $308.
Yeah, we love those 10% over asking price.
21 offers.
So down here, we might see 3 or 4 offers on the same house. I've heard the stories out of Rochester where they get, 15, 20 offers. That's nuts.
Absolute disaster. It takes forever. You got to go through and sort it out with the seller. And pick and choose. Okay, somebody comes in all cash, you keep those, obviously.
Yeah, right. Yeah, you gotta love the cash. Isn't it amazing how many people have cash these days?
Well, I mean, if you want to liquidate a 401k, more power to you. But most of the time, it just 21 offers. It took forever. It felt like forever trying to get through it. And
that's funny.
21 offers. It's still 279.9. And it went for 308,000, and it was gone. I put a delayed negotiations, showed it for a week. Appointments the first 2 days, open house the last 3, all offers in by Monday at 6 p.m. And finally at Tuesday at 6 p.m. after going through all the offers, that we decided on that, and they happened to be 308.
That's great. That delayed negotiation thing, that's not something we've done around here, but we've been talking about it lately, that if you're listing a property that you know is going to be a hot property and you're representing the seller, you might as well say, no offers will be considered until Saturday at 5 o'clock or till Monday morning or something like that. So you can generate as many possible offers as possible.
It's just easier. It's easier when you got them all in front of you.
Yeah. So that's a strategy on the seller side to think about for anybody, especially if it's going to just, right now we can't keep anything on the shelf. It seems like every price range is going like that. But yeah, so think about that. If you're listing properties, it's fun to list them because they're going to sell, but there's a way to maximize sell price, although you gotta deal with the headaches Steven just had with all those offers, 21 offers. Good Lord.
Yeah.
Wow. That's amazing. That's amazing. All right, let me get back to where I was here.
Ken, can I ask you a question?
Sure you can.
What is your thinking on
On what?
on inventory? And do you think like April 1st, the inventory problem will seasonally help, will it seasonally adjust?
I don't think it's going to seasonally adjust this year. I just, I don't think that we can put enough inventory out there to take up all the demand. Just like you said, you know, when he was talking about 21, Steve was talking about 21 offers. That's 20 other buyers still out there looking for that price range. I don't think we can put enough inventory out there. That there's nothing driving people to sell their homes. We're not losing employees around here where things are really pretty solid. I don't know of any big layoffs or shutdowns or anything taking place in upstate New York in general. So we're not driving people out of our markets. The interest rates are still so low. And the thing is, like normally you'd have, let's say the $300,000 owner, he'd be selling and moving up, right? Take advantage of the interest rates. Well, they're all afraid to do anything to put their homes on the market because they have nowhere to go unless they're truly leaving the area. But even when you talk to people right now that want to move to Florida, let's say, Florida's in bidding wars. I mean, Florida, we just came back from there. It's crazy down there. People are selling $350,000 listings for $400,000. I mean,
Seems like the whole country.
What's that, Anthony?
It seems like the whole country.
It is the whole country, except for New York City.
Right, right.
The rest of the country is nuts right now. Very low inventory, the whole country. And I don't know if you see any of Inman articles that come out on a daily basis. He keeps talking about it all the time. It's the same situation everywhere. And the fact that we have no new construction has really factored into that too. So if you're talking to any of your builder friends or remodelers or anybody, the cost of materials to build right now has gone through the roof. A sheet of OSB was selling for, I don't know, they said $10 or $12, it's up to $30. So all those building materials, shingles, siding, everything, they've gone crazy. We were charging $200 a square foot to build a new house. I haven't seen a price this year, but it's got to be $2.25 or more. I mean, so nobody's building new unless they've got real money. They're building on the lakes and things like that. We have no new construction to speak of in the whole Corning Elmira area. So you've got to deal with existing housing. So the houses that used to sell for 75 to 100,000, you can't find a livable house for under 100,000 now. So all those houses have come up, and that stuff's going to keep coming up because that's what you would consider your first-time home buyer, entry level. There's no new construction taking place in those kind of price ranges ever. That's just not going to happen. So I think it's just going to keep getting tighter this year. They're not predicting interest rate hikes of any real significance until 23, I think. So it's going to be tight. And the name of the game is listings, right? If you can get a listing, you've got a sale. And you can show buyers for a long time before they finally get one. So
That's the focus point.
What's that?
That's my focus point.
Yeah. Yeah, we all have to focus on that a little bit. So, all right, well, listen, it's almost 10:30. Why don't we take a 10-minute break? We'll come back and wrap up with just a couple things.
Ken, I got a question.
Go ahead.
When you submit, when all the offers come in.
Yep.
And there's a due date for an offer. Do you have to tell the other competing offers that they didn't win the house? And how long of a window do you have to respond and tell them they didn't win the bid?
I don't think there is any formal amount of time. And most of those agents are going to be a little anxious to hear.
They're just going to be reaching out to you anyways. Probably.
Oh yeah, they'll blow your phone up.
Yeah, if
Steven.
you've made a decision and you've signed a contract, I wouldn't tell anybody anything until it's actually a signed contract. But at that point, yeah, I would say you could either text or you might want to write up a text and then keep sending the same text to different people, but basically saying, thank you so much for your offer. The sellers really appreciate it. They have decided to accept.
Okay. Yeah. Cause I haven't. Yeah. So.
And then you're done with it, but you don't have to give them explanations. You don't owe them any explanations.
Okay.
They just preferred another offer. That's all you have to say. Doesn't matter about the dollar amount. I mean, they don't need to.
If the offer is accepted, would you just call the agent? You call their agent and tell them they won, or how's that work?
So the agent that actually represents the buyers,
Yeah.
that you want, absolutely, you're gonna call them up and
Okay.
whether there's been any negotiation or not, but if it's just a straight, they gave you a great offer and your sellers want to accept it, yeah, I'd just call them right up and
Okay.
say, congratulations, sellers have chosen your offer out of 6 or 8 or whatever it was. And we'll be signing the paperwork later today. I'll get you the contract as soon as I've got it.
Okay. All right.
Ken,
For that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
one thing I thought that was really great out of the offers that I got for the house that I listed was the agent sent the email to me with the offer, but he prefaced in like, it wasn't bullet form, but it was basically, here's a summarization of what we're offering. And it was, no contingencies, escalation clause. And it was great because, I mean, I only had 8 offers come in, but still trying to go through 8 offers. It was really nice to have that summarization email.
Sure. Yep. There's nothing wrong with that. That's good. That's nice objective material. Kind of highlights all the key points. I like that.
Yeah.
Good idea. Yeah.
He was the only one out of 8 offers that did that.
Yeah, that's nice. Nicole, what were you going to say?
So when I put in offers and they said, thank you for your offer, we've gone with someone else, I always email them back and say, oh, what was the other offer? Or like, can you give me more information? And usually they just give me vague. Are they not allowed to give you like what the highest bid was? Or they just don't do it at a strategic?
No, they really shouldn't disclose the terms of other offers unless their seller has told them it's okay to do that. When we do an offer like with the escalation,
Like, I have to like get good points.
go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead. I would say I get good pointers from them, like, well, in this offer you said this and this, and you asked for certain concessions, and people don't like it now. I'm like, okay, next time I put an offer in, I'll remember that. So,
Well, certainly if they're willing to share with you, there's nothing wrong with that from your end. I mean, take all the information, learn what you can. A lot of times, like I don't generally share much of that information. I just tell them, look, they just like the terms of the other offer better. That's it. That's all you have to tell them. Going back to that escalation clause for a second, if you guys want a copy of that, if you don't have one, let me know. I'll send you one. But one of the things it says right in there is that the terms of the offer and the escalation clause may not be shared with anyone other than their lawyer, their financial advisor, and the agent. That way they can't go out and shop our escalation clause with all the other competing offers. So you try and do as much as you can to protect your confidentiality for your client. So anything else right now, or should we take a 10-minute break? It's 10:30 right now. Well, let's just come back at 10:40. Okay.
Okay.
All right. See you in a few minutes. I love this one. They've been asking a lot of questions.
I got a skirt, I was trying to get some golf stuff to look at, and I got out one of my skirts, you know, the zippers broke, so I wanted to get that to flow. And so I got out a pair of my pants. Remember I bought a pair of those pants, two pair, they're black, and then one is like white with the pattern in them.
Yeah.
Right, or whatever, gingham, not whatever. And I never wore them, because number one, they were a little on the tight side, and then they were a little long. More so they were tight. So I put them on today. No, I attempted to put them on. I could barely get them up over my ass.
Oh.
I mean, when I say I could barely get them to here.
That's still on. I know it might be there, but.
Why would you fucking have to go on and do
What? Isn't there, it's all out.
like they're here? So this one I made too thick today. Now I realize what I'm doing wrong. I keep thinking more ice is gonna make it thinner because the water burn makes it thicker.
Yeah, that's cool. Okay, well. What's that?
I don't know how long it's gonna take me to get to that reasonable. I mean, if you're in with my same old jeans I wear every day because it's either better black than
Oh, okay, and then you got interchangeable.
I have been for a week working out. 2 or 3 times and I have worked out fine. And I did 2 days yesterday and I did 5 minutes. Yeah, I'm all for it. I would love to do that.
Jason, can you see that escalation clause? Is that being shared? Okay,
Yeah,
okay.
Hey, Ken?
Yep.
Hey, have you ever seen a market like this in your career?
No, so well, I got into this in '99. Corning Incorporated, which is our biggest employer down here, was big in the telecom industry, and that was booming.
Uh-huh.
We sort of saw something like this. It went for about maybe a year. They brought builders down from Buffalo and Rochester, and they started a big new subdivision. And new construction was going crazy, and the market was really busy. And then, like overnight, telecom busted, and I mean, it was amazing. We lost 20% value of our market like overnight.
Wow.
$250,000 new constructions were worth barely two. It was a great time if you had a job to be a buyer because the values just went plummeting.
Wow.
That's the closest we ever saw. We've never had anything like this since. I mean, this is just unheard of.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, you know, this happens a lot of times in the resort towns and this down in Florida. And it doesn't happen in upstate New York.
Well, it happens in like boom towns, like
Right.
your Austin, Texas,
Right.
Las Vegas.
Yep. But it's crazy. And I don't know what happens 2 years from now when everything is
Right.
all settled and
Right. When
life
the
returns to
when the
normal.
smoke clears.
Yeah, but it's a fun ride right now.
Yeah.
It really is. I mean, if you list a decent property, you're going to
Oh,
sell.
it's money in the bank.
What's that?
It's almost money in the bank.
It is. It really is. We
Yeah.
just listed one last night for 132.5, just a small little house. I'm waiting for my first request to come through. In fact, I thought I might get them while we were sitting here. I'm sure we're going to see showings on that immediately. I told them, I said, be ready to sell by the weekend. So,
Wow. Yeah, I remember when I sold my house. This is about 10 years ago. And you were so dependent on the buyers. You know, it's so different nowadays.
yeah. And when it's a buyer's market, it's really a lot tougher. I mean, you've
Yeah.
got buyers making lowball offers. They ask for everything. And the sellers are desperate to take a deal.
Yeah.
And so it's like a complete flip, and eventually we'll be there again someday. But right now, this is a lot nicer. I feel bad for buyers, frankly.
I know.
We had people come in town this week. They're moving here from Detroit. They sold their house for like $500,000, and they only want to spend around $300,000, which is probably what $500,000 is worth out there. It's probably the same
Yeah,
house.
right.
They went out. The husband was here first. We showed him, I think, 4 houses this past week, and he was leaning towards the one. He had his wife come in town yesterday. All but one are already under contract since we showed him this week, and the one that he liked the most is the one that was available, so we got it. But I mean, he wanted to show his wife houses, and the seller's agents are all calling back saying, sorry, it's under contract, but the sellers don't want any more showings. I mean, I can't even take them in for comp purposes, like just to give her an idea
Right.
what's out there. It's just never seen anything like it.
Now, are you licensed in Pennsylvania? Because you're kind of close to Pennsylvania.
I'm not, and frankly, the only reason is there's just not much there. I mean,
I got
you go south of here, you'd have to go 30 miles to go to Mansfield, which is a small little college town. But between here and there, there's nothing.
Okay. All right.
And Sayre, over where the Guthrie Hospital is headquartered, is about 45, 50 minutes from here. So
Okay.
it's not, I just don't. That's what we got here, 10:42. Well, let's get back to it. I don't really think we have a ton of other things to do here, but we're going to talk about presenting the offer and going on. I did finally figure out how to share the escalation clause. So I want to bring this up for everybody to at least take a look at. And I see in the chat room that a couple of people have said they'd like a copy. So I put my email address in there. If you want a copy, just send me an email and I'll send you one. But I'm glad I brought this up because there was one thing in here that we didn't talk about that was important. And that is whenever you're writing an escalation clause for a buyer, it's only natural for them to ask the question, well, if the escalation kicks in, how do I know they really have another offer? Maybe they're just blowing smoke and telling me they do so they can get my price up. So in paragraph 2 here, in the event of an escalation, the seller is to provide written proof of a bona fide offer. So we make them give us a copy of the first page our offer, the first page shows buyers' names, what they're offering dollar-wise, and then we ask for a pre-approval. So, like, you know, if you've got some unscrupulous agent, he can't just go sit in the back room there and create a fake offer because he won't have a pre-approval that goes with it. So we ask for proof of the contract and proof of the pre-approval to know that that's a real offer coming. So if they have that, then the escalation kicks in and so be it. And then this paragraph 3, we talked about terms and conditions of this offer not to be disclosed to any person other than the seller, their agents, and attorney until such time it becomes binding contract on the home. So you're trying to do what you can to prove it's real, to not have them disclose it to anybody else to negotiate against you. And then the rest of this is all related to, you know, if you've told them you're going to borrow 300,000 and the price goes up, you're telling them how are you going to put more down? Are you going to put the same amount down, borrow more, that kind of thing. All right. Any questions about that? Okay. So challenge myself again here. All right, so let's go down here. So I think we've touched on a lot of these things, but just to kind of go back over this. So presenting the offer to the listing agent. So I get an offer, you know, I've already gone through and called an agent, said, I've got some people with some interest. We might write it. Do you have anything going on? No, or yes. And then I make sure I do a escalation clause. So now I've got the offer in my hands. I'm going to call that agent back up and say, hey, I'm about to send you an offer for your listing. And I just want you to be aware of that. It'll be in your email in the next couple of minutes. Usually when I send them an email, I wouldn't call it a cover letter, but I like when I think it was Kristen was saying how she had an agent that did a nice summary for her. I'll do that in an email. I'll just say, hey, I've got an C offer attached. It's for 300,000 conventional loan, $2,500 threshold on the home inspection, close at the end of May, but they're flexible if another time's better for your seller, and just try and summarize those kind of things just in that quick email off to that agent. I generally don't do anything with regards to explaining who my people are, but if they're a doctor, I might say a medical professional moving to the area because it sets the brain that they've got money so they can afford to buy the house. But other than that, I generally don't say much. And that's how I would get it over to them. So I like when they email me back or text me back telling me that they got the offer. If I don't hear from them, probably later in the day, I'm going to say, did you get the offer? And then the ball's pretty much in their court. So all I can do now is sit and wait. I've shortened the time frames as much as I could reasonably. We've prepared the offer to the best of our ability and included the escalation clause if it's deemed necessary. And then we just kind of have to sit and wait. And that's the frustrating part for buyers a lot is, you know, you're not hearing anything for a little while, right? Or I might be the next thing I hear is, hey, we got another offer in, or there's 2 more offers coming in this afternoon. And again, if I've done an escalation clause, I'm ready for it. If I haven't, I might go back to my buyer and say, hey, we're going to be competing. It looks like, even though they didn't have any other offers when we wrote yours, they're getting them now. So we need to be prepared to deal with that. And you can always send an escalation clause in after the fact. If you need to, just send it to the agent, let them know it's coming. And that'll improve your offer enough, you know, to deal with the competition that you didn't have before. So let me see if it's the next. You know, when you present an offer to a seller, they always have 3 choices, right? They can take it, they can reject it, or they can counter offer. I mean, those are as if you're representing the buyer, you're going to hear one of those 3 things, right? They take your offer, they reject your offer, or they want you to come back with something better in some way, shape, or form. So we'll see about, let's just flip the table for a minute here. So let's just say you're receiving the offer. So rather than writing an offer and presenting it to another agent, you're on the listing side and somebody's sending you the offer. So you just got that phone call saying, here's an offer coming. You see the email, you know what their financing is, you know what what their inspection clauses say. You know, you want to make sure before you call your seller that you read the offer. I mean, you know, all of our offers are pretty much fill in the blanks. We know what the standards verbiage says, but you want to look at all the numbers that they've written in, make sure they sign the disclosures and those kinds of things. So when you call your seller, you're talking, you know, as if you know what's in the offer. You want to make sure you're sharing correct information. And to me, the one thing that gets missed the most, in fact, most of the time when I present an offer with a seller concession, is I put in my email, don't miss the seller concession on paragraph 3 or whatever it is, because you'll be surprised how many agents so excited to get an offer, right? And they go run into the seller, hey, we got an offer, $100,000, blah, blah. And it's a pretty key thing when you miss that there's a 3 or 6% concession being asked for. And it's happened many, many times. So make sure you read those things. Make sure you read where there's places for the buyer's agent to write in the things that they're asking to be included. Because maybe you weren't going to include the curtains, but they're asking for window coverings. Maybe you weren't going to include the hot tub, but they asked for the hot tub. They asked for the riding mower. They asked for the snow plow or snow blower. So there's all kinds of things they can write in. If you don't really read through it, you can miss those things. And many an agent has been known to have bought a snow blower or a lawnmower or something like that because they missed it and they ended up having to buy one for them. So really pay attention to that before you call your seller. And then when you call your seller, you want to be objective. If it's a great offer and you know it's a great offer, those are fun to present, right? I mean, you love to call a seller up and say, hey, we got a full price offer, or we got an offer for more than asking price. They want to close exactly when you want to close. They waive the home inspection. I mean, what a great offer to present to your seller, right? Who's going to say no to something like that? But
And it's something to mention too about that, snow blowers and lawnmowers and all that shit. That's all personal property.
it is.
It's not part of the bank financing.
Correct. And the bank will usually ask you to break those things out. They'll allow
Right.
appliances and water softeners, water
Yep.
filters to be included. But you're right, all those other things. And frankly, when they start talking, like the seller will come back and say, hey, we're only going to move about half our furniture. We ask your folks if they have any interest in buying any of our stuff.
Right.
I like to get the contract together, signed, sealed, delivered, attorney review, all that stuff done. And then they can talk to each other about the furniture. I'm not a furniture broker. I don't want to be a furniture broker.
Nope.
You know,
Or,
I don't want
or a
to
tractor
negotiate.
salesman or anything else.
Oh yeah, good Lord. Well, we were asking 800 for the dining room table, but
No.
no, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do any of that.
Yeah,
So
all that, I put that in my my private descriptions, that, you know, the listing I have now actually is like that. Everything goes with the house, the pots, the pans, all the stuff. I had to put that all in there. Listen, this isn't driving up the price of the house. This is just personal property. He's including it, you know, just to make sure that there's no, because I don't want to get involved in that shit. That's waste of
well,
time.
we've had the lenders have us write a separate document that says the following items will transfer at closing with a value of $1.
Right.
And then you list those things out.
Yep.
Oh, okay. That's a good idea.
Yeah, it saves a lot of aggravation.
Right. Yep. All those things. So anything can be negotiated in or out of a deal. But you're right. You got to handle it correctly with the paperwork. So
Yeah, because it'll make or break a deal sometimes.
yeah, right. Right. All right, hang on one second. Let me catch up with my own paperwork here. So I think this review the offers on page 10 in your guide. Let's see here. So this is kind of the reverse side of when we were talking about what you're learning from the other agent about the motivation of a seller. Now, if you're representing the seller and somebody's bringing you an offer, this is talking about wanting to find out as much as you can about that buyer. How long has the buyer been looking? Have they lost out on any other deals? Mostly this is information you're trying to gain so you find out just how motivated that buyer might be, right? Let's say you're not in a competitive situation and somebody just brings you a $90,000 offer on a $100,000 listing. You know, you're trying to figure out how much closer to 100,000 can I get them? It's nice to know something about how motivated they have. If they have lost out on several houses, they probably don't want to lose again. Or, you know, when do they start their job? There might be a certain amount of motivation that they have to get here by a certain date. That puts pressure on them. And, you know, buyers always get hung up on, you know, they get within $2,000 or $3,000 of where they wanted to be, and then they get hung up on that. They don't want to move. And if they ever stop and think about it, or you tell them, you know, $2,000 over 30 years is like $8 a month. I mean, it's so insignificant. You'll never, you don't know the difference. And the fact that you're probably not going to be there the whole 30 years really reduces how much you're actually paying extra. Anyway, so don't get so fixed on a certain number. And in the end, that might be an insignificant difference. $2,000 to a seller is $2,000. To a buyer, it's $8 a month. You know, so sometimes that brings things into perspective for either side. So this is like kind of the checklist for reviewing it. So this is you're reviewing it before you're going to call your seller and tell them what you got, and then you're going to present the offer to the seller. So you're going to give them a call. You're going to say, hey, guess what? We got an offer already. Let's get together and talk about this. Nowadays, we've been doing offer presentations on Zoom, some on the phone. If you have an experienced seller, like we've got some people, you know, they're selling their 10th house or something. This is kind of old hat to them. All they want to know is, give me the details. You know, what are the numbers? What are the dates? What are they asking for? But ideally, you know, you have a face-to-face, or at least where they can see you on the TV, on the computer, sorry. Because you can read them, you know, as you're presenting things to them, like you tell them, hey, they offered $90,000, and they're like, ooh, you know, like, I mean, you get an idea of whether this is something that's got a chance of working or where you need to try and make the improvements in the offer. If their house has been on the market for a while, which is not the case today, but you might have to update a CMA. You know, somebody comes in, it's been on the market 90 days or 120 days, and you finally get an offer. Maybe the market analysis would show they should be down closer to where the offer came in. And then you present all the different details of the offer. I hate to give them the price first. You know, that's the one thing they really want to hear. But I'll tell them the buyer's name. Sometimes they might know them. Again, this is another area you got to be careful. Like if the buyer's name is Gonzalez, let's say, Hispanic, you know it's Hispanic. You know, are these people? You got to make sure you're not doing anything to violate fair housing. It's all I'm coming down to. If you're giving them an obvious minority class or a special class, you have to be careful that they're not saying no for that reason. It seems like this crazy thing to talk about. But with all this Asian protests taking place right now, who would have ever thought we'd be having protests about discrimination against the Asian population? I've never seen it. So just you know, present things as objectively as you possibly can when you're talking about anything in there. Obviously, the only things that really matter, it's not even the seller's or the buyer's name, price, terms of the financing, what they're getting or asking for, and their contingencies, their home inspection, that kind of stuff. Just be smart not to get yourself in any trouble. And for a lot of sellers, again, very objective, and others, you know, it's the house they raised their children in, very emotional. They're leaving it. They, you know, they've been there for 30 years. You just have to treat them differently based on where their perspective is coming from. And then you know, they have to reach a decision. So again, like we talked about, what's the seller going to do? They're going to either counter the offer, accept the offer, or reject the offer. If you counter the offer, as soon as you make a counter offer, you've essentially rejected the offer. You don't have a contract of any sort, but you are in the negotiation. So if you had so much time to respond, like you had a 2-day window for the life of the offer, you are responding within that life of the offer. Generally, I've never been concerned about the life of the offer. If you're going back and forth a little bit, we just change the life of the offer if we reach an agreement. But so you counter the offer, maybe you've asked for more money or you've asked for a different closing date. Fine, you go and see if they come back with something that works for you. Everything can keep taking place. And generally we do our negotiating verbally. Some people like to have it in writing. If they want it in writing, you can certainly get it to them in writing. But you don't have to. Obviously, if they accept the offer, you're going to get with your folks, have them sign the contract, and then submit that back to the buyer's agent that you have a deal. I would go ahead and let them know you have a deal, you've accepted the offer, even before you get the paperwork done. And then in a different time when people were making lowball offers, you might just reject the offer. You know, I always like to go back and say a polite no thank you, not just like what your seller may have really said, like, you could take that offer. And so, because they may come back with something. Some people truly back, you know, in those kind of markets, they're just testing the market. They are trying to see is how motivated the seller is. So they make a lowball offer, seller comes back and says, thanks, but no thanks. Come back when you're serious. Then they might come back with a better offer. And if they don't, nothing lost. You didn't waste any time, and your seller's not interested. So, but I like where it says here, don't assume no means no. So yeah, your seller might reject the offer. The guy comes back $10,000 better. Now all of a sudden you're back to where you're countering an offer and negotiating a different deal. So, you know, and sometimes I talked about a little while ago about how somebody can get hung up on just the little things like a $2,000 difference to a buyer. You know, sometimes you'll get a seller, you know, that'll say to you, I've even had this, they say it at the listing appointment sometimes, well, I have to net $200,000. I have to net 200. You know, in the back of my brain, I'm thinking, well, I mean, sometimes that might be realistic. Sometimes it's like, where did that random number come from? You know, and you might even ask them that, like, where did you come up with that? Why do you think you're going to get $200,000 in your pocket? You know, they don't understand all the closing costs, the commissions, how all that's going to factor in. Generally speaking, people like to negotiate a little bit, although again, not so much today. But, you know, when they get down to where they're haggling over $500 or $1,000, what I have found is that you really run the risk, number one, of just losing the deal. Or what I think happens a lot is, okay, the buyer gets pushed to a number they didn't want to go to. And then what happens when they get the home inspection done? You know, it's like in the back of their mind, they're thinking, well, I paid $2,000 more than I really should have for this house. The home inspector's pointing to, you know, some minor things here and there, and I want those things fixed. And I feel like they get their $2,000 back or more because the seller kind of ticked them off, right? So sometimes it's not worth haggling over that last little bit. I've even gone back with the seller and we've said to the buyer's agent and to the buyer, listen, we're going $2,000 lower than what we expected or anticipated doing. Don't come back nitpicky on the home inspection. Like, you know, we feel like we're doing you're getting this at a good price. We're not interested in doing a lot of things unless you find some major problems. So you're trying to temper the loss with maybe we're not gonna have to give up anything on the home inspection. If it works out that way, great. But I mean, generally you don't want to be haggling over just a little bit of money at the end, that's for sure. Responding to the offer. We don't really have the ability to break out and do little role play things, but I mean, if I, you know, I guess think about that, how you're going to respond to the offer. You're going to be coaching your seller on this, right? And you bring them an offer that's pretty good, but there's a couple little points that they'd like to go back on. And this is coming up with a response to the offer for you to go back to the other agent. But, you know, you may say, yeah, you're right. We probably should ask for another $5,000, but I wouldn't go back asking them to change their home inspection clause, or I wouldn't go back looking for a different closing date. They've asked for a reasonable time frame, or, you know, you have the ability to coach them. In the end, you're not making any decisions, right? The client's making all the decisions. You're giving them your best advice, your opinion. I mean, they're basically hiring you to be as a consultant for them and representing their best interests because you do this all the time. They don't. But if in the end they tell you, no, I want you to do this, this, and this, so long as it's legal guidance, then that's what you're going to do. And if they lose and you warn them, you told them, then that's the way it goes. Next time they listen. Any other questions about presenting an offer, or even how to respond to an offer? Is there, I mean, I always tell my sellers, even if it's a lowball offer, any offer is better than no offer. Not always true, I guess, but I mean, I'd rather have somebody bring me something. If nothing else, your seller, if they get 2 or 3 lowball offers, they may come to realize, geez, I guess I'm not priced where the market thinks I should be priced. So there's an advantage to even taking lowball offers, even though they may not go anywhere. Remember when you're counter offering that it can be any terms of the contract, not just the price. People get hung up on the price, but there's a lot of other things in that offer that matter. We've touched on multiple offers. That's not really part of what they've got in here. I know the next session you have is negotiating, so we don't really want to spend a lot of time actually talking about negotiating the deal, but anybody have any questions about any of this? No? So really, a lot of what's left in this session is for you guys to make phone calls or to spend some time doing some role playing with each other, which these Zoom classes don't lend themselves so easily to that. Is there anything else that we'd like to talk about? I like this class today because I like the question and answer stuff more than I like the presentation stuff. So if anybody has anything else they'd like to talk about, otherwise, I know it's an hour early, but I don't feel that there's anything else we need to do on here unless you do.
Thank you very much, Ken. It was excellent.
You good? All right.
Yeah,
well,
that
listen,
was great. Thank you.
Yeah, I wish you all the best. I know you're getting started. If there's ever any questions you have, I'm always available, and send me an email if you want an escalation clause sent your way. I'll take care of getting that.
Send you an email. I put it in the chat, so I will send you an email.
Yeah, I put my email in the chat.
Okay, thank
All right.
you.
Yep.
Thanks.
All right, you all have a great day.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you.